Someone once said, a politician is like a turtle stuck on top of a post. You know he didn't get there by himself. He doesn't really belong there. He can't turn around. He can't really get anything done, and all you want to do is help the poor thing down. Hello, boys and girls. Lord Hawkeye yet again. Yeah, it's been a while since I've shown my mug on here, but felt I'd respond to someone who has actually done the very difficult task of getting Jacob Spinney flustered. So I guess congratulations are in order in there. So anyway, let's dive in and see what we can pull out.
Yes, you did strawman me. Yes, you did misrepresent my arguments. Assuming that your misrepresentation of my argument was intentional, that means it's a straw man. If it was unintentional, then that just means you have very big problems with understanding and comprehension and listening skills. And this is why I'm saying you're acting like an apologist. It's either one or the other. I can't think of any other reason.
Well, I can. One other possibility is you're pulling the same trick I've seen a lot of people do, in that you're keeping your arguments as vague and ambiguous as possible so that you can constantly shift the target around whenever someone calls you out for them. But, I'm fair-minded, so I'll reserve judgment on that for the moment.
In my original video when I mentioned Africa, yes, I did. Thank you for the apology. I did not bring up Somalia. I said, look at the African countries with all these poor and starving people. And we send aid to them, and it gets intercepted by these warlords who then use it to bolster up their military, and all it does is help strengthen their stranglehold, really. The intention of my point here is to show how anarchism is not a tenable idea. It is not something that you can even hope to ever accomplish. It is a ridiculous utopian ideal.
Never, ever is a very long time, my friend. I do hope I got the right number of evers. I wouldn't want you to think I was strawmanning you. Anyways, have you looked... Here's some perspective for you. Have you looked at what people 100 years ago used to predict about us? They were wrong about almost everything. And you're going to sit there and tell me you are gifted with such godlike insight that you can say for a fact that it could never work? Oh, the arrogance.
The entire point of that video was to say that in a system with no government, a government will emerge, and more often than not, the government will be warlords.
Oh, where do I begin with this one? Okay, first of all, this is akin to deliberately driving your ship into an iceberg because you were bound to hit one anyway. Come on. There was always going to be warlords, therefore we should elect a warlord. I really don't see how that improves our situation. Anyways, Secondly, this also works on the assumption that once upon a time Africa was an anarchy and then suddenly warlords came in and wrecked the whole thing. Far as I know, not so at all. Africa, as far as anyone can remember, has been ruled by one tyrannical ruler after another. There was never any anarchies in there at all. Somalia is an interesting case. There are still warlords there, but even then, the current living situation down there has improved since they tore down their government. It did not erupt into chaos overnight like all the statist nutcases would try to lead you to believe. And thirdly, if you have a stateless society and you're trying to say that someone's inevitably going to rise up and overthrow them, take over, and all other sorts of unpleasantness, it's not so. I will be linking a video by Stefan Molyneux explaining exactly why, but the simple answer is any attempt to rise up and take over state society would be stopped by one simple question. How are you going to pay for it? Taxes are the lifeblood of wars. Without taxes, there can be no war, because war overall is a money loser. The only way you can profit off a war is if you can offload the cost to someone else, and the only way to do that is through taxation.
This is where gangs and warlords come from. This is where the mob comes from.
Oh, could not be more wrong if your name was W. Wrongy Wrongston. First of all, gangs and mobs were created by state restrictions. You see, When a state makes something illegal, you create a niche that the black market will exploit. Now, because the black market is not able to resolve disputes using the legal system, they instead arm themselves and use violence in order to do so. This is where gangs come from. It is how Al Capone got filthy rich and became as powerful as he was. It is why the drug war has caused gangs to become so rich, some of them can even in fact afford nuclear weapons. And this is where smugglers come from and all this other sort of thing. Gangs and mobs are 100% the fault of the state. They are not the result of anarchy or lack of regulation. That is absolutely ridiculous. As for warlords, they didn't suddenly come into a stateless society and build their own state there. They came into a state that was already there and took over it. This is the problem with the state itself. As long as even if there are moral people in the state, if you have a seat of power, sociopaths and evil people will seek it. If they can't get in legally, they will do it by force. That is what warlords are. Once again, the state is the existence of the state is responsible for warlords. They are not the result of anarchy.
You rail against the state because it is an oppressive, monopoly of force that taxes people. Oh, it's so horrible that I'm getting taxed against my will. This isn't voluntarism. Well, you know what? What's the alternative?
I don't know. I just had this crazy idea that maybe people should be allowed to run their own life and spend their own money that they earned on what they think it should be spent on. Gee, what the heck was I thinking?
And have a constitutional government like we have, where the government has to follow rules.
Oh, the Constitution. Oh, you mean that piece of paper that the politicians were frequently violating and getting away with before the ink was even dry on it?
And the no true Scotsman fallacy? Yes. Well, that's not a true anarchy. It's the same thing that socialists pull.
No, Eagle, that's not true at all. Their definition is very clear. You can see it on Wikipedia. You can go to freedomainradio.com or any other such website if you have any questions. It's all explained very clear in plain English, very many times. If you had any genuine questions about anarchy, you could easily find it out with the many resources available to you. The reason why you don't is because you'd much rather stick with your definition, which basically amounts to point to the crappiest country you can find and arbitrarily declare it anarchy just 'cause. And you say that we're strawmanning. Weak. The truth is, no, it has not been tried before. No society in history has ever dismantled their government with no intention of creating a new one. Not even Somalia. Somalia's statelessness was accidental. That's why there was a lot of chaos and confusion at first. However, like I said, things have improved since they got rid of their state. And the truth is, anarchy does work when tried in small ways. I mean, you choose who you date, what your job is, and many other things by anarchic means. I mean, you don't club a woman on the head and drag her off. You don't point a gun at a businessman and tell him to give you a job. No, you do that by voluntarism, and they do work, and you wouldn't want it any other way. So it is absolutely ridiculous to say that you need to point guns at people for other things.
Because human beings, people in general, are corruptible and corrupting and stupid, and they make mistakes with things.
And that's why we need to have these stupid corrupt people elect other stupid corrupt people to have all the power and guns so that they can run all these stupid corrupt people. It's just too logical for words.
And so even if you had 100,000 perfect people in a volunteer society and they were all perfectly ideologues about being completely voluntary, they have one child that doesn't get it, and it's ruined.
I'm afraid you're going to have to explain how, because I'm not seeing it. However, it is also true that if one really bad person gets elected, there's quite a lot of damage he could do. But hey, that could never happen, right?
So this is what I'm saying. Anarchy is based off of you have to trust that every single person in the world can maintain it.
Wrong. Anarchy trusts that every single person in the world is self-interested, which they are. So, once again, you might want to do your homework before you start spouting off.